The city has learned to sleep through sieges. Tonight, it does not. Lanterns move along stone like small comets. A wind from the Marmara flattens pennants that are less banners now than prayers. We will keep close to the worn places. The gate where emperors once entered, the steps inside Hagia Sophia, the ramparts where wax drips on ledgers and scraped helmets. This is not a tale of lost splendor told for its own sake. It is the story of why one night mattered to continents, and how men standing in the dark understood the dawn that would follow them. The hour is late on May 28, 1453. Constantinople is a small empire within walls that once guarded the world east of Rome. Theodosian masonry rises in 3 bands above dry moats. Repair lime stains the joints where earthquakes have unsettled old brick. Inside the city, Emperor Constantine XI, last of that name, is lean from marching the line, armor burnished to hide fatigue. Beyond the land walls and the Golden Horn rides the army of Sultan Mehmed II, 19 years old and relentless, with artillery assembled from Balkans to Anatolia and a navy cabled into place like a second shore. Their names fix the scene. Constantine in the city of Constantine, Mehmed encamping over the fields of Thrace. Between them, between centuries, lie the gates. The pressure began before tonight, but its weight is felt most clearly now. The chain that bars the Golden Horn still holds, the giant links wet and black where they meet the tide. Yet Mehmed has dragged ships over greased timbers above Galata, floating them behind the barrier as if sneaking a river uphill. The bells in the city do not ring with alarm. There is a curfew order to keep the sound low, but news passes in the old way, through markets and cisterns, through courtyards where garden soil remembers Roman hands. Constantine has less than 10,000 defenders, counting the Venetian and Genoese contingents, the household troops, the monks who carry arrows in baskets. He depends especially on Giovanni Giustiniani, a Genoese captain seasoned in island wars, now stationed at the vulnerable St. Romanus sector where the guns have carved new shapes into ancient stone. Giustiniani is the city's strong nerve turned outward, his men drilled to rush the breaches with wood, rope, and stubbornness. In Mehmed's camp, there is industry and theater. Oxenhall powder. Muezzins calculate the night prayer, the sky above them bruised with smoke. The Sultan walks among the gunners and sappers with a discipline that is not purely ceremonial. He has staked his youth on this, not merely to take a city, but to invert a map, to make the Bosporus a pivot of his empire, to press trade routes into his customs houses, to command a strait where ideas and goods must ask permission. He senses the old story fading, the world with one Rome at the center. He carries another story forward, sovereignty that associates conquest with law, taxation with order, patronage with piety. He is not yet the conqueror, but the title has already entered the conversations around the fires. Gennadios Scholarios prays toward dawn as a severe monk can, weighing doctrine against necessity, wondering how a city survives when its unity has been tested by union councils and crusader debts. Lucas Notaras, the Mehmed II, reviews the harbor. His mind is a ledger that must reconcile loyalty and survival, Venetian promises and Ottoman offers, the arithmetic of ships. George Francis, the emperor's chamberlain and chronicler, notes things that matter to posterity because they mattered to men. A cloak's hem wet with seawater at midnight, carved capitals wrapped in cloth so that splinters will not fall on the icon below, an exchange of bread between soldiers who share no language. If there is a human scale to a city's last night, it is this: men counting arrows, a widow pulling her shawl tight as she crosses a courtyard, the spice trader, half asleep on a step, who wakes to give his last 2 candles to a church. No one has time for rhetoric. The argument is weight and stone and fatigue. The stakes are unambiguous. Whether an ancient Christian capital, with its libraries and laws, will continue to speak in its own voice, or whether that voice will be absorbed into a new imperial register, still learned, still administrative, but spoken from Edirne and soon from this city itself under another name. The east is only a hint. The city watches the siege turn from artillery to decision, because artillery alone cannot end it if men keep filling the gaps. Along the walls near Blacherny, the Ottomans have advanced their trenches, piling fascines into the ditch, rolling mantlets forward. Over days the guns have pulverized towers like old teeth, but masonry breaks unevenly and men move in the hollows. Giustiniani's men, armored and grim, have grown intimate with specific stones. This chipped merlin that hides a Venetian arbalester, that bent iron clamp, which someone pries at each morning and never succeeds in lifting. Constantine walks there after midnight. He shares water, touches shoulders, and tells a truth that is not grand. Hold a little longer, and we will repair a little more. Mehmed spends this night curating time. He has already launched assaults to test the rhythm of the defense, to observe where stamina wavers. He knows that a single breach, a moment when the rhythm fails, can cascade across miles of wall because men believe what they see happening a few towers away. He orders the azaps, the irregulars, to wear down the defenders, to die if necessary so that disciplined troops can follow. He keeps the janissaries, his corps, in reserve. His artillery will fire by intervals, the great basilica gun wheeled into range for terrifying shots that crack mortar joints and the mines behind them. Somewhere in the chain of command, someone passes out dates to the men who will go first. Someone else writes a name on a wooden tag and ties it to a wrist. Inside Hagia Sophia, the dome is a night sky of its own. Candles mesh with gold tesserae and give the impression of stars surviving indoors. Women and children gather under galleries. Clergy chant. The sound does not plead so much as state a claim. This house has stood since Justinian blessed it. It has witnessed earthquakes and crusaders who came as Christians and behaved like invaders. It has outlasted emperors and mutinies. It might outlast this. The prayer is steady because it has been practiced. A boy looks up, sees a hawk feather caught in a cornice, and remembers the field outside the walls where he once watched a hawk hang on the wind. The memory is a harbor for him. The moment when pressure becomes decision is not theatrical, but it is legible. Just before dawn on May 29th, Mehmed releases the first wave. They assault the damaged sectors, shouting to announce mass and disguise weakness. Ladders skid on stone. The azaps clog the ditch where it narrows. Arrows rake them downward like rain reversed. Defenders pour oil and sand. They push off ladders. They strike at hands. The second wave is more organized, Anatolian troops with shields, and these find footholds where rubble provides steps. They are repulsed with iron and certainty. Still, certainty depletes itself. Constantine moves along the inner rampart, keeping the line from becoming a rumor of abandonment. Giustiniani is wherever the breach is largest, his breath heavy behind his visor. He has learned the city's heartbeat. He can tell, by the pace of messengers and the quiet between cries, when a sector is about to need him. Near the St. Romanus gate, amid dust and white noise, he is wounded. By shot or arrow, the sources disagree, and the pain is sudden, inward, decisive. He signals to be carried back. His men see him borne away. In that instant, geometry turns to psychology. Defenders who had borrowed his resolve find that the loan is unexpectedly due. Some hold, others drift. Mehmed senses the vibration. He throws the janissaries into the noise. They are not superhuman. They are trained to cross hesitation in a single practice step. A banner appears where no banner should be, atop a damaged tower near the open ground. It may be there only for a minute, but a minute is long in the arithmetic of panic. The Kerkoporta, a small postern in the northeast sector, has been rumored open. Whether it is myth or momentary oversight, the idea of it multiplies across the line like a spark in dry grass. Constantine fights in person near the Lycus Valley. He refuses retreat, slashing in the press where insignia cannot be seen or matter. He disappears the way some men disappear, not into mystery, but into the work of the last few heartbeats. When the wall is crossed, the city changes not gradually, but at once. Notaras sees it from the harbor, a shudder of formations, then a run. He knows ships and tides. He sees that the tide has turned beyond seamanship. On the landward streets, doors close too late. Monks carry icons. Some Venetians and Genoese cut their moorings and slip toward the Bosporus or the Marmara, choosing the sea rather than the inside of a conquered town. Francis pushes through courtyards, making for the palace quarter and then, when that is past saving, toward the church where his household shelters. A man who has served courts all his life does not become a soldier in an hour, but his courage is methodical. He will find his family if he can. Mehmed enters the city with control. He restrains unlicensed destruction because he plans to own what he takes. Plunder is a tradition of siege, and he allows it within stated limits because governors must purchase obedience with custom as much as with pay. Yet he already imagines administration, registers, tax farms, a revived urban core that will feed his treasury and his legend. He goes to Hagia Sophia because that is where sovereignty can be seen. The dome is still a sky. The floor is crowded with fear and astonishment. The Sultan orders the church converted for prayer, and then quiet, pragmatic, triumphant, intent on two futures at once, one temporal, one sacred. Outside, the aftermath is a human weather. Wailing, bargaining, silence, hands raised, hands hidden, rushes stuffed into cracks as if the city itself might be made whole by a local repair. Some households are spared by writ, others not. A Genoese woman holds the keys to a shop as if keys were charms against change. A boy in the Blacherny quarter finds a copper coin pressed into a joint between paving stones and imagines that he has discovered proof that the city will continue. On the ships slipping out to sea, a few men cry not for loss but for the end of waiting. They have lived a night stretched so thin that even fear is tired. Mehmed walks the palace grounds where Byzantine courts once taught a choreography of ceremony unmatched in Europe. He is not bewitched by ghosts, but he respects technique. He will keep some officers, repopulate neighborhoods with Christians and Muslims and Jews, and summon artisans from across his provinces. He will reorganize markets under guild law. He will invite scholars, import books, and guard the revenue that allows ambition to materialize. The Ottoman Empire had been a belt of strongholds. It becomes a state with an imperial city at its heart. To govern this place is to control the negotiations between the Black Sea and the Mediterranean, between silk and wool, between caravan and keel. News runs outward on the same routes that brought pilgrims and spices. In Rome, shock. The idea that a Christian empire has ended lodges in the papal throat, a cough that will shape calls to crusade, and the pleading tone of envoys. In Venice and Genoa, calculation, trade will continue, but through new agreements, with new tolls, under new flags. In Moscow, reflection and opportunity. The claim to be a third Rome will creep from sermons into policy, taken up by princes who see in the fall not only a prophecy fulfilled, but a vacancy to inhabit. In the academies of Italy, men who read and annotated Greek manuscripts will feel urgency, and, with it, possibility. Presses will labor. Translators will become conduits for texts that survive the city by leaving it. By dawn, the city learns a second language in the mouth, the sound of the adhan floating over districts where the liturgy has just ended. It is not a replacement so much as a juxtaposition that will gradually become a pattern. Hagia Sophia receives carpets. Minarets will come later. The immediate condition is still raw, but policy follows quickly. Mehmed will declare himself Kaiser-i Rome, Caesar of Rome, and few titles have ever been more exact. He now commands the seat that once governed the Bosporus. He inherits not faith, but administrative geography and a mental map. He will rebuild the walls where they are needed, because walls are useful to governments, and he will allow neighborhoods to claim their trades again, because markets are the arteries of rule. We should name the loss with care, because we have inherited its culture. The imperial court that ceased to exist today left behind law terms that shaped kingdoms to the west, theological formulas that traveled everywhere, domes and basilicas that taught builders how to lift stone into light. The absence of that court closes one chapter and opens many. Orthodox communities from the Aegean to the Balkans will find their fortunes braided into Ottoman policy. The Patriarchate, under Gennadios Scholarios, will be reorganized with privileges and constraints that reshape religious leadership. In Italy, scholars will treat Greek not as a luxurious appendix to Latin, but as an organ of thought necessary to breathe. The trade of parchment and type will widen. Merchants will redraw price lists. Sailors will learn new harbors by new names. There is dignity even in the administrative details that follow defeat. Inventories are taken. Warehouses are sealed and reopened under different seals. Ledgers once written in a chancery trained on Roman precedent will now be kept in a system that weights paper with the authority of a different capital. The city's clocks are human, water sellers, bakers, imams, priests, tax collectors. In the weeks to come, choices will be made that seem small and will accumulate into a pattern of centuries. A certain street will be known for dye. A certain courtyard will always be shaded by the same plane tree because it was spared in the first week. A printer across the sea will glance at a manuscript saved by a fleeing clerk and decide to take a risk on a costly edition of Thucydides. The turning point remains simple to describe and hard to live through. Giustiniani's removal from the wall is a fact. The breach near St. Romanus is a fact. The momentum of the Janissary advance is the hinge on which the narrative swings. Constantine XI's death in the crush, unseen by those who would have recorded it formally, is a line where imperial continuity ends and imperial myth begins. The city does not fall because it forgets how to fight. It falls because numbers, powder, and a new strategy align with a young ruler's will. That ruler brings not only soldiers, but a theory of empire that can house trade, law, and faith together under his seal. In the smaller spaces, people fashion meanings that fit the hand. A woman who has lost a brother takes comfort from recognizing the face of an old neighbor among the new officials. He had changed sides once. Perhaps he will now bend rules for her. A mason who spent the siege lifting stones finds that his skill is suddenly employable by the victors, and he hates the chance even as he depends on it. An apprentice in a scribe's shop hears that Italians want copies of Greek authors and understands that he can turn fear into a business plan by midnight. Continuity comes not from a constitution, but from 1,000 acts of accommodation and stubbornness. It matters to know what did not happen. There was no general uprising inside the city that brought down the walls from within. The defenders did not abandon their posts to pursue treasure. They exhausted themselves holding masonry together. The Sultan did not order indiscriminate obliteration of the place he wanted to occupy. He measured violence and restraint in a calculus that served him. The myths will collect later and grow moss. But the record, in letters and chronicles, keeps its edges. Men wrote what they had seen and did not adorn it, perhaps because they were too tired. Myth versus record. The tale of a forgotten postern. Kerkoporta, standing open all night and inviting the fall makes for a sharp story, but the evidence points instead to a breached wall, a wounded commander, and a concentrated janissary push that exploited fatigue rather than accident. The meaning of the night lies less in the inventory of spoils than in the map it redraws and the mental habits it reorganizes. Eurasia's trade learns to ask leave of a new office. Europe's politics will be told with Constantinople's absence as a constant pressure, on crusade rhetoric, on statecraft, on the funding of voyages that look west, because the East now taxes ambition differently. The Portuguese and the Spanish will sail around Africa and into the Atlantic for reasons that predate this night and for reasons sharpened by it. Ideas move when roads close. Presses quicken when debate heats. Universities care about grammar when theology and law are in argument. A sultan who funds architecture and madrasas, who becomes a patron of scholars, ensures that the city he has taken will not be merely the end of something, but a new center. For the Orthodox world, survival acquires administrative forms. The patriarch, under Ottoman protection and control, becomes both religious head and civil representative. This creates a way for communities to persist with their rights intact and their authority bounded by the empire's needs. Lines of liturgy that originated in basilicas where emperors stood will be recited in parishes far from a court, but the memory of a court will inform them. Memory is not an echo. It is a set of obligations that people accept or refuse. A calm detail returns us to the human scale. In a workshop near the Forum, a craftsman sets aside the tool he was using when the shouting began. It is a chisel, slightly nicked, still warm in the hand from hours of use. He wraps it in cloth and places it in a box where his father's tools lie. He does not know whether he will need it tomorrow or whether he will be allowed to keep it. The gesture is domestic and stubborn. It is a prayer without words, offered to a future he neither trusts nor entirely fears. We must speak once more of the emperor. Constantine XI is not a legend because he died in gold, or because he raised a sword that gleamed in literary light. He is a legend because he refused to exit the frame of duty when the frame broke. The men around him saw a sovereign choosing to be an officer among officers at the last. That image, transmitted without detail, sustained communities who needed a figure equal to their grief and their pride. The Sultan across the field becomes a different kind of emblem. Youth disciplined into purpose, educated ambition that sees administration as the art of making conquest permanent. Two men, two choices, one city that for a time belongs to both of their stories. Outside the land walls, the fields will soon recover. Grass grows over trenches. Powder burns leach into soil and then are forgotten. Shepherds will bring flocks toward the old aqueducts and the green arches of the ruined palaces. Children will play in moats that have become gardens. Life is not forgetfulness, it is practice. Merchants will practice bargaining. Clergy will practice consolation. Judges will practice weighing, even when the scales are new. Hagia Sophia's dome keeps catching light differently each hour. This will satisfy architects and poets from now on, regardless of what language they use to name the light. The city changes and keeps changing, as cities do. But the night we have walked through remains a fixed star for navigators of history. It closes the book on an empire founded in the afternoon of antiquity and opens a ledger in which the modern Mediterranean learns to balance its accounts. At the end, return to small things. A page is smoothed on a desk to be copied. A mother counts children with her hands because the mind fails when the heart races. A soldier washes his face in a fountain whose rim has been polished by generations of anonymous elbows. A new seal is pressed into wax. The impression is clear. The air smells of dust and sea. Bells are quiet. From a minaret improvised on a tower, a call floats and is answered by footsteps in the streets below. We leave the city with its new name forming on tongues, not to dwell in catastrophe, but to understand continuity. The fall of Constantinople on May 29, 1453, is not simply a moment when stones gave way. It is when one imperial imagination yielded to another, when trade lanes accepted a new arithmetic, when scholars and sailors rebalanced Europe's sense of direction. What endured? Law shaped by empire, faith practiced under negotiation, the habit of learning, proved stronger than any order of march. What changed? Sovereignty, tariffs, the compass of ambition, altered the dealings of continents. The last night is thus both an ending and an origin, an image of torches on walls and of a horizon opening because a locked gate has been replaced by a different kind of door. Walk away quietly. Let the city settle into its next century. Remember only that decisions taken under gray light, an emperor who stays, a captain carried from the wall, a young sultan who chooses restraint with purpose, can tilt the world. The sea goes on breathing against the chain at the harbor mouth. By noon, that chain will be coiled in a warehouse. By evening, new ledgers will be opened, and a scribe will wet his pen. The page is broad. The ink is dark. The lines run from here.